Things have looked pretty bleak for Microsoft in the past. There hasn't been a great game in quite some time. I'll touch more on that towards the end of the video, but I will say that Hellblade 2 has entered the arena, and I think things might be looking up. A little backstory, I never played the first Hellblade, so when this was announced, I wasn't really sold on it. I did have some people that told me the original one was great, and after seeing how this game looked during the Xbox showcases, I was definitely excited. My issue is Microsoft had little to no marketing for this game. If it wasn't for me having a presence on Twitter, I would have never known this game was coming out. So there was definitely some disappointment there. However, seeing what I had seen in the Xbox showcases, I was definitely excited to play this game. Now, without spoiling my score for the game, I will say I do feel like Hellblade 2 is something special. I haven't enjoyed a game this much on Xbox since the original Titanfall on Xbox One, which is saying something. So there's just been countless disappointments over the year and nothing that has really made me want to finish an Xbox game. Hellblade 2 may only be 5.5 hours long, but I feel like there's still quite a bit of depth there. Now, when I say depth, I don't mean depth as in there's so much to do and see in the game, because it's not. It's a very linear experience, but there's a lot of character depth. The story, there is a lot there to process and see, and just overall the environment and how gorgeous the landscapes are. That's what I mean by depth. There's just something special about Hellblade 2 that deserves to be seen. Now, without spoiling the story, you play as Senua. She is taken over after the events of the first game, where she is captured by a slave trader, all to avenge the fallen someone. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't played the first one, but she's doing some stuff to avenge somebody. And in doing so, she finds out about giants and how they're terrorizing the lands, and it's up to her to stop the giants and free the people of this land. And that's where we stopped discussing the story. I did like the story a lot, and I tried not to spoil anything with it. So, that was just very bare bones. I will suggest playing the first one before trying out this one. There is a previous to whenever you boot up the game, so it does give you an explanation on what happened with the first game. But I know from my experience, I would have rather had played the first one before playing the second one, just because of how special the second game is. Hellblade 2 is a story-driven action-adventure game. Most of the game will see you walking from one point to another point, really gathering the story of the world, hearing what is going on in Senua's mind, which I'll kind of touch base on that in a minute. But there are some fighting scenes. There's not a lot, maybe a handful. Along the way, you do have puzzles that you have to complete. The puzzles can get a little bit boring. They're not too difficult or anything like that. And I will say there are some points that just seem to drag more than others. But the nice thing is with this game only being about 5.5 hours, I don't feel like the game overstayed its welcome. If this would have been padded into a 13, 14-hour game, I definitely see moments where it could get way, way slower and the game could overstay its welcome. But I think with its short game time, it actually was the perfect amount of time for this game. Now, to further touch base on the gameplay, there are some issues that I have. One of the things with Hellblade 2 is the game doesn't explain anything to you. It just expects for you to know. It wasn't till about 3 hours into the game that I found out you can tap the A button in a fight. If you get knocked to the ground and it looks like you're about to die, you can just tap the A button over and over and over again, and you'll sometimes escape and roll out. I did not know that. The game didn't explain that at all, and if it wasn't for me just happening to tap the A button to see if it would work, I would have never found that out. The game doesn't explain anything to you, which is a little bit annoying. Also, with this game being such a cinematic beauty, the cinematics look exactly like the gameplay, which is also a downfall. And I know you're like, how could that be bad? Well, the game doesn't have any indication when you're watching a cinema versus when you are actually playing. There was multiple times in the game where I thought it switched over to a cutscene and it didn't. And I'm crawling through a dark dungeon or something, just crawling through a space. and the character would just stop. And I'd sit there for like 30 seconds. I'm like, do I have to press a button? And then I'd have to figure out what button, because the game doesn't tell you what to do. Figure out what button to press, and then I could move on. There would have been it would have been nicer to see something like a black bar around the screen, pop up when you're in a cinematic and disappear when you're actually playing. Just some sort of indication that I'm no longer in the cinematic, or vice versa. But for the game to look this gorgeous, and the gameplay to look that gorgeous to where you can't discern which one is which, just bravo. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, I want to talk about two things before I jump into my thoughts on Senua and her personality. The game, like I said, is just absolutely gorgeous. This is one of the best looking games I've seen, and it's definitely the best looking Xbox game out there. So, just very, very well done. Also, the music is well crafted. There's some throat music in there, and I never knew I liked throat music until a Dungeons and Dragons game came out, and I was like, oh, this kind of hits. And yeah, so there's some throat music in there, and it just hits. So yeah, the music's great as well. Now, Ninja Theory has done something special, and that is showcase mental health and mental illness in a different light. Now, Senua suffers from multiple different ailments, if you will, or as my son puts it, Dad, she's crazy. She suffers from a few different things. Schizophrenia is one of them. And to be playing the game and see these voices pop up on the screen to where you're hearing different voices. And it's really cool because like I don't have a surround sound system, but I have like 3D audio with my TV. And so it was hearing like one voice was coming from here, another one was coming from here. It was so cool to see that. And to have these voices be like, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Don't do that. How I want you to be safe. Like all these different conflicting voices, and the model, the facial structure on the model and everything, how they created this character, you can actually see in her face, like the fighting that she's doing with her inner demons. It's so cool, and just such a fantastic job what they built with this, and such a fantastic job how they showcased mental illness and really shed light on something that, a lot of people don't know about. Now, on to the part that is always fun, glitches and bugs. And there were a few, and this is where it kind of stinks. I touched base on a few of my gripes earlier, but as far as bugs, I ran into three that I wanted to talk about. The first two weren't really like anything crazy, but when jumping off of ledges or climbing down ladders, there were times where the camera kind of like froze up for a second. It wasn't a lot. It happened maybe like 3 or 4 times, but it was enough for me to go like, okay, come on now. Also, Senua's hair sometimes does not work correctly. The physics of it just doesn't work. There'd be times where her face is perfectly still and her hair whips from the left and goes to the right and back and forth, and it's like she's doing the nay-nay. I'm like, what are you doing, Senua? Stop that. So the physics in her hair, while it looks fantastic 98% of the time, there were times where it just was doing its own thing. Now, my biggest gripe with this game happens to be something that we had seen before. If you watched any of the Xbox showcases, you would have seen a fight with a giant on a beach. I'll leave it at that if you haven't seen it. During this fight on the beach, and I'll try and show some of it on here. It's been out for a while, so if you haven't seen it before, it was part of the Xbox showcase. I'm trying not to spoil anything. But the fight scene, when watching it during the showcase, it looked fantastic, and that's actually what sold me on that game. I was like, wow, I need to play this because of this fight scene. And what I saw compared to what actually happened was a little bit of a disappointment. There was so many frame rate drops during that whole entire sequence. It just played absolutely atrocious, and I feel like something that you showcased to everybody, something that was so big that you showed everybody how great it was going to run, for it to turn around and run awful, just god awful, was such a huge, huge disappointment, and by far my biggest issue with the game. Other than that, I loved this game. I think this game is a genre-defining game for the Xbox Series X. It is a must-play game if you own the console. Definitely something worth checking out. I do have my gripes, which I explained, but even with those gripes, I do think this game is something incredibly special, and it is the first big win that I feel like Microsoft has had ever since Titanfall. I am a little bit worried with the marketing and everything, and I don't think that everybody who is an Xbox fan is going to love this game because not everybody loves this style of game. But I do think it is something definitely special for Microsoft, and I'm excited to see where the saga goes with Senua. I would give Hellblade 2 a 9 out of 10. It was just a beautiful, beautiful experience, and one that I'm glad that I did get to experience. Now, really quick, I wanted to discuss something I brought up at the beginning, and that is the state of Xbox and kind of how I'm feeling towards them. This doesn't really affect the review or anything like that. If you notice, this was my very first Xbox review, and that's because I haven't really had a game with the Xbox that I've enjoyed in quite some time. I feel like Microsoft has given us a lot of different games, and they're just not what we've expected. They just aren't as great as we want them to be. I do feel like Microsoft has set themselves up to completely kill it. I used to love the Xbox 360. That was my go-to console over the PS3. So I'm so excited to see what Microsoft can do. And I really hope the marketing for this game, and even if it doesn't do well, I hope they don't pull a Hi-Fi Rush and cancel the studio and close it, because this game is just absolutely stunning, and I would hate that. So here's to more years of Xbox, and I really, really hope to see them succeed and absolutely kill it like I know they can. Other than that, that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like that, hit that like button, or you can like that, hit that button, whatever. I don't know what I was trying to say. And subscribe to the channel for more Platinum Review goodness. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you on the next video. And as always, keep getting those trophies, or in this case, keep getting those achievements. I'll catch you next time.